wellnesscouch.com, streaming wellness into your lives.
Welcome to Nourishing the Mother, featuring your hosts Bridget Wood and Julie Tenner.
Hello and welcome to Nourishing the Mother. I'm Bridget Wood.
And I'm Julie Tenner. And today's podcast is Emotional Labour, How Your Stuff Shows Up in Birth.
And I'm just laughing because we both thought that this was a different topic.
So as we're texting during the day going, what do you want a podcast on? I threw this one out because it had come from a listener's question who had asked us about, because we've done a few podcasts on birth part 1, birth part 2, birth with Brie, there's been a few.
Yeah.
And on, I think, birth 1 and 2, I had mentioned about the emotional aspects of labour and, triggers and, dynamo moments and what labour takes you into. So this listener had asked for more around the emotional aspect of labour. So when I've thrown this out to you and you've jumped on it, I was like, oh, okay, cool. She must really be in that space, which is awesome because she's pregnant at the moment.
Yeah.
It's so relevant, great. And so when we got here and we sat down to record, we were on completely different train tracks.
And it's so funny because I taken it as the emotional labour that is motherhood, right? and which was kind of what we did last week. But isn't it funny? I totally interpreted it as something different, even though I'm well aware that, of what we're about to talk about is so true for pregnancy. It was just so funny, just how we both interpreted it so differently. And clearly I selectively heard half of our conversation.
Well, I did think that was interesting. I was like, oh.
Yeah.
What do you not want to drop down into?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then, I was like, we're talking about whether do we do this podcast or not? And was I feeling it? And then I was saying, I don't really feel it. And then I started saying stuff and you're like, shut up and can we just start recording because that's exactly what we're talking about. So here we are.
So it's just not conscious, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's probably not conscious or I probably don't think of it as enough. But actually, it's probably heaps, right?
Totally.
Because, we're always looking to dig deeper, aren't we?
Yeah. So before we jump into that, I'd love to remind you to jump onto nourishingthemother.com.au and sign up to join our tribe on the homepage. Scroll down past the courses information and you'll see a red banner that has Join Our Tribe. Drop in your email and once a fortnight we will send you a beautiful email that has everything we've put in the world for the last 2 weeks and you can click on to dive deeper, and occasionally we send you a love letter that is something a little bit more intimate that we're not quite willing to put on socials. So if you'd love a little more Nourishing the Mother, please jump on to nourishingthemother.com.au and sign up to join our tribe.
All right. I'm so excited for your incredible doula wisdom in this podcast that I know is just going to pop out. But I'm a little bit nervous about it too.
Well, I wish actually that we had a little more context from our listener. If you're going to email us a question, we really love specifics. So as opposed to a great big broad topic that we could be very broad in answering, I would love, if you're going to write to us, to have really specific, I'm interested in this or this question on this is the context from, the slice of life I'm coming from.
This is my story. This is how I
because it actually makes it easier for us to respond and hopefully more potent and powerful for the information that you receive too. But please keep writing to us because we really do genuinely keep a stockpile list of podcast suggestions.
Yeah.
So if there's something that's screaming out to you and it pops up in our world, then that's what we're going to do. So please do PM or email us and we honestly do read everything.
We
so
do.
Thank you for listening. All right, emotional labour. So Bridget, I was kind of hoping also you were going to be like, oh, Jules, let's dive into this and I wouldn't have to think so much about what to talk about. But I'm going to start and we'll see what happens. Nothing from the crowd?
Well, I just tend to go off on tangent and I just have random things pop up. So see how we go, right?
Yeah, okay. So when I think about the emotional side of labour, what I'm thinking about as a known experience to me is that when women choose to birth naturally, meaning there's not drugs that prevent them from entering their subconscious space, that's what they do. They go through a series of almost natural hormones that flood their body almost in a drug-like state. And they enter what is almost like a spiritual experience or, the Dharma would call it something different, these layers of our psychology and our spirituality, and you can literally see women transition through them. So the conscious front brain cortex starts to recede and disappear, and the more animal primal stuff I've got stored deep in my body stuff starts to speak. And I find that I have such honor and reverence for that as a process within itself. And I'm always a little bit excited to see what comes up. And this is also the purpose of doing work in pregnancy. This is for me, that there's so many doulas that I hear that are like, oh, the prenatal appointments don't really, they're not like you just give them, everybody kind of gets the same information and it's all their choices and it's the birth that matters. And to some extent, I split off from that because I actually put a lot of stake in those consultations that you have during pregnancy, of which with a doula, I think there should be 2 to 3. Hopefully, if you've got time, if you're 38 weeks pregnant, there's simply not time.
Yeah.
But if you are consciously trying to create a birth experience, then I would hope by 20 weeks you've employed a doula. Which then also allows you, another 18 weeks to book in 3 appointments. And as you journey through the 3 phases of pregnancy, you will also experience 3 different levels of intimacy or awakening to what those stories are that are hidden in your body. Because as it stretches as well, as the body physically stretches, as the abdomen stretches, as the organs move, like there's shit stored there.
Well, yeah, I guess that's stretching you into a new possibility of awareness of what's stored there.
Exactly.
Because you haven't accessed that breadth of your tissue before in that way.
Exactly. Nor your psychology. So, and you already, as you have said before, Bridget, you're already parenting whatever number baby this is. It's not once it's born you're a mother.
Yeah.
You are in this phase too. So you're already co-creating whatever experience you're having in pregnancy.
Yeah.
And so your child is already perfectly designed to take you exactly where you need to go. Like it's freaking
and not just
amazing.
you. Like I think about how your unborn child is already affecting your relationship dynamic. It's already shining a light on areas that you know that you're resisting and want to lean into, but you're scared and and you're being pulled there because you know it's important enough for you to talk about. Like that's already happening by virtue of this new soul coming in, this new being growing and moving and on a physical level creating hormonal shifts in you, but on a far deeper spiritual level, massive consciousness shifts as well.
So if I'm sitting with a woman who I'm having a birth coaching call with, or I was taking on as a client, I'm really spending time looking at what is her history, and I'm looking for red flags. I'm looking for the gremlin that I know I'm going to see in birth, because I'm looking at whatever information she can give me and her partner about that now. We can already, start to look at the story and start to break down that whole thing more consciously during pregnancy. And we can start to build a toolkit for handling it when it comes out. And that completely radically changes what you see in birth. Because one, if you process enough, it might not come up.
Yeah.
Or if it comes up, you already are consciously aware that it's there, which makes the conversation of, I feel like this is hitting here for you. Makes that bang, you drop straight into it. And the partner and I now both have a toolkit for handling, 3-year-old you in that moment. And we know, because we've already had deeply honest conversations about, despite what your behavior is, here's what you really need underneath all of that. And so we can drop straight into that without you having to ask for it. And that radically changes what's possible for you as you enter that, because it's only going to come up if it's hitting a trigger point and it's asking you to grow through it.
Totally. And I just realized how much fucking work I didn't do the second time. Because I'm like, shit, there's so much that I've missed. Because I already look at like
Every layer though, I think, every birth.
Well, I think that you would never be done, right?
No.
Like you're never going to be done.
No, unfortunately.
No.
But this is also where I think it's it's a deep portal into our psychosis. And, well, yeah, I mean, I guess it is psychosis, but our psychology. What I really love about it is because you are, it's like, I don't know, I kind of think of these movies where, you know, there's like end of the day stuff and there's this perfect celestial alignment, and that's when it's the most potent power of whatever, you know, those types of movies.
Yeah.
That's what I think birth is. When you're really entering that, you are almost that celestial alignment. You are spiritually, mentally, and physically more open and able to access like you will never be able to in any other part of your life ever. And to consciously be able to take yourself spiritually to those layers, I believe would take spiritually a really consistent, long-term dedicated practice to be able to potentially reach those, or maybe not at all. So to be able to walk in them physically and experience them in the moment feels like such a gift. But fucking hard, right? This is like every fairy tale that says you've got to enter the deep dark forest. This is the deep dark forest. So what's hiding in your deep dark forest? Because that's what we need to know about as a birth team. And that's what you need to bring conscious. And that's what pregnancy lets you know about.
Yeah.
Because your body will physically show you symptoms.
I know, right? And I love that because, in fact, I had like a massive release with a chiro last week. I don't even think I've told you about it yet.
No, I don't think so.
And then after that, and then some new information that's like kind of affecting that came to light, and I had the most sorest, like I've been having this like sacrum kind of problem sort of in my back of my right hip. You know, like right back sacrum kind of. Never kind of like sciatica.
Yeah, yeah.
And I've never had that in other pregnancies. And it was like on fucking fire this particular day. And I knew what was talking to me about it. And it's shifted now, and I haven't had it really since. But I thought this is wisdom. Like this is my body talking to me about what I'm holding and what I'm being called to work through, what I'm being called to release. And it's the same thing with I've got an umbilical hernia that I'm now being called to manage better so that I can, you know, enter birth with confidence and also the postpartum period in a way that I know I can care for myself. You know, I know that my body can handle it. But if I'm wondering if my body can handle it, I'm really just wondering if I can handle it, right? Because my body's me. And a hernia, it's like the threatening of your stomach splitting, right? Like bursting open. You being unable to contain the walls, right? Which there's so much in that. Like there's so much in, can I hold all this? You know, can I possibly meet everyone's needs? Can my relationship hold this? Like it's a question of holding. So it's not simply my physical body is stretched from 2 massive babies and I'm small. Yeah, but there's more than that here. And that's also the work that I'm doing to make okay the more, make okay me within the more, and make okay the more within my relationship. You know, can my relationship handle the increasing demands on it and on us, and how do we continue to meet each other as you know, when parenting feels hard, or you know, when the you know, the extra demands feel like it, that there'll be moments where we'll feel disconnected, and how do we show up through that? And that's what this calls me into. And it calls me into having more conversations with my husband about what I want it to look like, how I want him to show up for me in birth, postpartum, you know, in the conversations that I want to have.
So you can be open without pressure.
Yeah. And, you know, it's funny you say that, because that was one of the things I'd said to him. I said, look, it's going to be important for me that I'm not intensely straining in labour, which means I need to work on opening, and I need to be as in my body to allow my body to almost effortlessly bear this, you know, bring this baby down and out. So that, and that means clearing all of the stuff that's in the way of me believing I can, you know, of doing that, right? Like it's everything that's in the way of fully dilating and giving over to the process of birth. Because
which ultimately is your psychology of opening.
Yeah.
And what you've made safe for your body in terms of its ability to open.
Yeah. Like it's powerful.
On many levels. Yeah, totally powerful. Perfect example, Bridget.
Thanks.
So, you're going to get these signs and signals and symptoms during your pregnancy. The relationship, there's something a little bit tweaky, about it. There's something that's just kind of in your stomach go, about it. Don't squash it down. How about you just bring that shadow to light? Or you're hyper emotional. You're not crazy. There's shit that just isn't consciously coming out. So it's finding an unconscious way.
Yeah.
But there's a way to bring that consciously and grow through what it's asking you to grow through. It's not there by accident. It's not just simply everyone experiences this. This is really specific to you and what...
We're just interrupting our podcast on emotional labour when your stuff is showing up in birth to let you know that our next round of Loathing to Loving is coming up very soon and we'd love you to join us. For more, go to nourishingthemother.com.au.
You need to grow through to be able to parent this child that you're growing. You have to morph and change. And sometimes you can do that during pregnancy and you have a birth that can be ecstatic and, dare I say, orgasmic. Orgasmic being many different things. So orgasmic being, yes, some women actually experience an orgasm, but there is many definitions of what an orgasm is. An orgasm is not just those, few second muscle spasms. It's that awe feeling of total openness before you get to those spasms. And it's that feeling of psychologically and spiritually feeling connected and oneness. That's also an orgasm. So also sort of jumping out about what an orgasmic or ecstatic birth looks like. And I don't know, I just not to say that any birth goes wrong either, because I don't believe that. Yes, there's birth trauma. Yes, there's stories that we all need to heal from and understand their wisdom from, and often that needs to happen afterwards. But every birth experience still holds a perfection within it. And often we don't know that perfection while it feels so bloody awful. We often only get that insight when we've really been held by someone who can move us through that in a way. So I think about birth taking us to our edges, every edge that we have, every part of us, right, Bridge, that needs to open further beyond where we've kept it caged at currently. It takes us to each of our fears, because we will literally run screaming into every fear that we don't bring conscious in pregnancy. Your birth will hit you there if you think you're, I'm pretty scared about this. I don't know. I think maybe I'll have an epidural, but, if it gets too much, well, that's going to happen. So whatever you want to not deal with, you will come screaming into in birth. So it's there for a reason. And if you come screaming into it in birth, that's fine too. But there's still purpose in hitting it. You will hit it. But it depends on when you press the pause button. So
did you press the pause button early enough to
did you press it? Did you press it in pregnancy? Okay, it'll just jump to the next step, birth. Did you press it in birth and you didn't have to do it on your own? Great, it'll show up in newborn. You know, did you press pause there? Well, it'll show up in toddlerhood. Like you don't escape yourself.
I remember like Rhea Dempsey talking about that actually at an event I did recently, and she was saying, if we try to if this labor bypass area where you're trying to bypass like the feeling of labor, it's you can't bypass parenting. It's going to show up somewhere. Because it's purposeful.
Yes, exactly. The pain is purposeful. And I think that about birth. So wherever it's taken us, regardless of what ideal we had in our head, there's purpose in hitting that edge, that pain point. I think that birth offers us the opportunity to bust our illusions and fantasies of ourself, of our identity. It's very well crafted often, of potentially the world and the people we have within it. And it allows us to equilibrate anyone we have on a pedestal in a pit. Up on a pedestal or down in a pit. It allows us to some extent hit in the middle. Now either you're going to end up with the birth you never thought you ended up with, or that you would end up with.
Yes, the complete polar opposite to what you wanted.
So you've had to meet every judgment you ever had. well, shit, that equilibrates you.
It's enormously humbling, that one.
Yeah, right. Or, you have the opposite experience where you're able to consciously do that and you end up somewhere where you really worked really hard to get to.
Yeah.
I think there's purpose in that. It asks us to be without all of our cruxes. So, I keep thinking about so many stories or women's stories of the descent into the underworld. And that's what birth is. It's almost like you start with your 21 coats of labels and identity. And through the process of birth, regardless of how it goes, to some extent, each one of those is removed and stripped from you until you are naked beyond the fact that people are looking at your vagina. You're like way more naked than that, right? You're without anything but your deepest soulful you. And there is purpose in that and how you meet her and how people around you meet her. Because that is life altering. How safe are you at your core, stripped of everything? How safe are you? How honoured and sovereign are you? And that's, I think, incredible. And what makes me so angry about the current healthcare system that we have and the way that we treat women in birth.
Yes. Yeah. Which is another story.
Yeah. And birth teaches you surrender because when you can't be in control, of which pregnancy teaches you already, someone else is driving this body. You're not in control of it the way you used to be. You have urges coming out, you wahoo. You're not in control. And the minute you think you are in control, something will happen to prove to you that it's not.
So many kicks right now.
Yeah, you're not in control, lady.
Yeah. My baby's just reminding me.
And I think there's beauty in that, how we meet surrender, because that teaches us how to be safe in overwhelm, how to be safe enough to let go and experience ecstasy, how to follow and be absorbed in our child. That's surrender. But there's a lot of ourselves as the woman that comes to the point of birth that we need to strip away to be able to be there. And if you don't have, like a stoic practice of stripping away, then birth's going to take you there.
Yeah.
Or newbornhood, one way or the other. And I think surrender, when we can meet it in a way that's, almost like a mantra and a philosophical teaching. Emotional aspects of labour teach you that. How much can you hold? How can you be the riverbed rather than the banks? How can you find your safety by rolling on top of those waves rather than feeling like you're dumped by them? This is surrender. It's trusting that you are bigger and greater and belong to something more profound than what this immediate experience is. And you can dive so deeply beneath those waves that you can feel that connectedness. You can do that. But you have to set that up in pregnancy to be able to meet it in birth. These women that have these awesome births, they don't just happen. Those women have worked fucking hard to get there. And this isn't naming and shaming and birth blaming of any sort. This is, let's change the culture that we have in the way that we don't want to hear the good stories because they don't justify our bad ones.
Yeah.
This is the rising feminine. This is the raw that says there's power here when all we want to see is passivity.
Yeah.
This is the spiritual comeback of motherhood as a rite of passage rather than it being something you have to get through. You have to labour through it like a to-do list. No. This is a deeply psychological and spiritual experience if that's where you want to take it. And if you don't, that's cool. That's fine. But you are still going to meet the edges somewhere. And I just think that's a really interesting conversation.
I could listen to you talk about this all day. I'm captivated.
Well, I could talk about it all day, Bridge. So we're like two peas in a pod.
And then I could get angry all day about the bullshit.
I know.
And write letters.
I know. It's really sad, actually, when we think about, you know, I don't know, when we think about that. I don't know. There's so much. I don't think I even want to open up that topic because I don't think I'd stop. But coming back to emotional labour, I guess I just want to lay the foundations for there's physical you and there's spiritual emotional you. And pregnancy takes you to both edges, but we only focus on the physical. But it's the spiritual and psychological that moves the physical. It's not the other way around. How you feel and how you think elicits what you experience. So you want your experience to change. You've got to change the way you're approaching your thinking and feeling. And that's the work of pregnancy. That's the work of a doula. That's the work of really investing in a birth team that supports your physical, spiritual, and emotional opening so that that can be a pathway to ecstasy in birth. But whatever it is in pregnancy, your baby's co-creating with you anyway. That baby wants you to go there for a reason. You want you to go there for a reason. So take pregnancy as less of, oh God, I'm sick and I'm this and it's that and I'm so tired, as what's the message it's trying to give me here? Because you get the message that's going to shift the feeling, the state, the issue, the sciatic hip, right? I don't know, Bridge. I mean, where do you want to go from here?
I'm just captivated. I'm rethinking my decision not to have you as my doula, and fuck, we need to do some shit bloody work. Because I feel super aligned and I feel like I can really show up, but I think
you have shifted massive.
I have shifted massively.
Massive stuff in this pregnancy.
But I'm also like, okay, like as I'm edging closer, I'm like, okay, what haven't I dealt with? You know, because I want to deal with some shit because I know it'll show up, right? And I want to face it because I know that this third baby is like calling my relationship into new growth for sure, you know, and that feels scary, right? Because the things that are most important to us, you know, we most fear rejection in, right? Like I couldn't give two fucks like if I'm rejected by people I don't know, but the rejection burns when it's people that you love the most.
Yeah, it does. And if it's a top value of yours.
Yeah. But there's also purpose in leaning into excavating what those perceptions of pain look like, because it's usually not even a truth, right? We've just got it from somewhere and we've held on to it. So why is it there? And why might it show up in birth? And how do we back ourselves to move into that? How do we, because I'm having all of these, and it's hilarious actually, because I'm having all of these conversations with my husband and we're both on the same page around like creating emotional safety for our son, like as he moves through this transition with school. That's me with birth and us with this birth of this baby.
So how perfect is your son creating the safety already?
It's creating,
yeah, it's amazing.
You know, like, and I'm in my head, and I even said it to a teacher today, like I was like, I'm not going to leave because I promised him that I would hug him at the end of assembly, and it's important for me to create his emotional safety around, you know, my commitments to him or whatever it was I said. And I'm like, I'm just talking to me about my next journey into this, right? Which my children are bringing to me on their own various levels. Like how profound.
It really is. Synchronicity. Hey?
Oh my God, I only just got that then. It's so interesting.
Yeah, it really is.
And you know, and the challenges we face in pregnancy, how are they purposeful? You know, like how is me like grappling with how I'm going to manage like this stomach separation and this hernia, and how is it's calling me into more conversations of with my husband around what I need from him, you know, and it's reminding him of how he needs to show up and provide for me, and it's helping him feel equipped to know what I need, you know, like that.
Which is what I'm talking about, is the list, right?
Yeah, that's really powerful, and that's life-giving to our relationship and to us and to us intentionally preparing for this transition, you know? So I could feel like it's a drag that I've got to think about this all the time
or alternatively, you could tap out, right? You could seek a medical intervention of some sort or of many sorts. That would mean you didn't have to think about that and you didn't have to have those conversations.
True. Yeah, that it could just be this.
And you didn't have to think about how can I emphasize my opening so I don't need to strain in birth. That's not a common thought process.
Yeah.
Normally it's problem, medical intervention.
Yeah.
So I don't have to go there.
Yeah. Whereas, I'm totally like, how do I need to support myself to open fully? Because babies know how to be born. It's us that kind of gets in the way. So, yeah.
It's big.
It is big. It's really big. But it's kind of exciting.
And often these are the type of conversations you need to have with a tribe, and that's certainly the type of conversations that we like to have in our members group.
And I mean, like, this happens. I mean, and what I love is like the women in our tribe, like, you know, we're still journeying our birth experiences years later because we know there's layers there. We know like there's stuff there. There's wisdom there. And
there's trauma there, which is also pain that needs to be moved before you can get the wisdom that's underlying it.
Yeah.
The pain's there for you to get to pay attention because you're not listening to the happy-go-lucky stuff. But the pain will stop you in your tracks.
Yeah.
So, but that doesn't mean it doesn't have purpose.
No.
And that doesn't mean it doesn't need to be honoured for being there. You know, sometimes there's got to be a death of various sorts in order for us to birth life. And that can be a death of ego, a death of story, a death of an old self. It can be many forms of death in order for us to literally birth life. I always think we enter that duality whenever we're creating and birthing life. I'm always fascinated by what always exists with birth is some facet of death and vice versa. Whenever we're entering death, there's some facet of life that comes with it. It's the cyclical nature of life. So I think that's an interesting question to ponder as well.
Yeah.
So, and we do have loathing to loving. We have actually had some women who've been super savvy and in their pregnancy really wanting to shift some stuff for birth, which I just think is incredibly cool.
That is incredible.
And I so wish I'd had that back in the day, Bridge. So if you really feel like you are totally ready to dive into maybe what's sitting there and what you can consciously do to create a different path moving forwards with your birth, then we would really invite you to jump on to nourishingmother.com.au and have a look at Loathing to Loving, L2L program. And we do have a live round coming up for that. So check out the website.
Yes.
And to connect with you, Bridge,
suburbansandcastles.com. And you, Jules?
Is thepleasurenutritionist.com. And you can find us at nourishingthemother.com.au, Nourishing the Mother on Facebook and Instagram and Pinterest. I keep forgetting to say that.
Oh, yeah, and Pinterest.
I'm a mad Pinterester, so I often get on there. Bridge less so. I have to
must say I
whip your butt a bit.
Really,
but you're not really crafty, are you? I freaking love it anytime I've got anything to do. I Pinterest it.
Yeah, I used to when I was like, I don't know, planning a wedding or something. But no, I haven't been on there for quite some time. Maybe a wedding or like bedroom or something.
I even added in a folder the other day, crafty much. And I thought, Bridge will never open it.
Crafty much? Yeah. It was like with a question mark.
Yeah.
You would be surprised. I used to be quite crafty. It's just not in my realm these days.
Your craft is more form.
Yes, it has. My creativity is different now.
Give us our wrap-up sentence, Bridge.
Remember to nourish the woman, to rock the family.
And we'll see you next week when we continue to peel back the layers on your mothering journey.
This has been a production of TheWellnessCouch.com. Check us out on Facebook and join in the conversation on Facebook.com/TheWellnessCouch. Subscribe to each show on iTunes and check us out on Twitter. The Wellness Couch, streaming wellness into your lives. Whilst the Wellness Couch presenter endeavor to provide accurate and helpful information to their listeners, these podcasts cannot take into account individual circumstances and are not intended to be a substitute for health and medical advice from a qualified health professional. You should always seek the advice of a qualified health professional before acting on any of the information provided by any of the Wellness Couch podcasts.